1. This situation occurred in the summer, 6 years ago in my small town in northeastern Colorado. I remember every detail as if it were just yesterday. At the time, I had a best friend, Anna, who lived with her mother, Doreen, her grandmother, who we will call Grammy, her aunt Cara, and Cara's daughters, Hattie and Amelia. Hattie and Amelia were sent to Kansas to spend time with their grandmother, Sharon. Their father, Bill, was in jail due to domestic violence towards their mother. Hattie had recently been sent home for a bad attitude. On this particular night, Cara and Hattie went to stay with Anna's sister, Cadence, and I was spending the night with Anna. It was a warm night in late July, and Anna and I had planned to go to the drive-in. Our drive-in was in the next town over, so a 10-minute drive. They would play 2 movies, starting at 9 and ending around midnight. I remember one of the movies was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Doreen took us to the drive-in where we sat outside the car with a couple of our friends. When we got home, it was shortly after midnight and a storm rolled in. Doreen settled onto the couch, downing her nightly boxed wine, and Anna and I went to play video games. We heard the thunder crack through the clouds, releasing a downpour of rain. After several minutes, Anna and I decided to go into the kitchen to grab a snack. As we walked into the kitchen, we noticed a little red light blinking on the answering machine. "I wonder who called," Anna said, walking over to the machine and pressing the play button. "Hi, Doreen, this is Sharon. I just wanted to let you know that we got a call from the police station saying that Bill escaped from the jail. Nobody's sure where he's headed, but I don't think you guys will have to worry about anything. I just figured it was best if Cara knew, just in case. Amelia and I are fine, but if you could call me when you get this message, just so I know if Cara and Harry are safe, I'd really appreciate it. Take care." Knowing about Bill's past abuse towards Cara and the girls, Anna and I were concerned. We tried to wake up Doreen to let her know, but she had too much wine and was out like a light just to be safe. Anna and I went around and locked all the doors and windows and decided we should just call it a night. One that didn't involve much sleep. Early the next morning, Cara and Hattie returned home. Anna and I told Cara and Doreen about the message, and Cara called Sharon right away to let her know that they were safe. After breakfast, Doreen and Cara sat outside while Anna, Hattie, and I went into the game room. Anna got on the phone with one of her internet boyfriends, while Hattie played RuneScape and I sat on the floor playing the SNES. After about half an hour, Doreen came in the back door to put on her shoes, and told us she was going to mow the lawn while it was still cool outside. I felt as though we had barely heard the screen door slam shut when Doreen was suddenly pounding on the window of the game room that faced a small backyard. "Call 911! Bill just came out of the garage and stabbed Cara!" she yelled to us. Harry bolted from her chair and out the back door. I jumped up as well and looked at Anna, who was still on the phone. I jerked the phone from her hands and hung it up quickly before dialing 911 and handing the phone back. I walked into the living room and heard Anna explaining to the operator what had happened. I looked towards the big picture window that faced the neighbor's house and saw Bill casually walking around to the front of the house. I ran to the front door and quickly locked the deadbolt. Anna came to the front window and peeked outside. "Yes, he walked out the front, and he's leaning against the bed of my mom's truck, smoking a cigarette," Anna explained to the operator. Anna and I went out the back door to see what was happening with Cara. Doreen was kneeling on the ground next to Cara, who was slouched up against the house. A crimson smear of blood stretched down the white siding of the house behind Cara. Nausea overwhelmed me when I saw the blood, and I looked down at the ground, only to see a bloody pocket knife glistening at me. I yelped and jumped to the side. I grabbed Hattie, who was crying hysterically, and held onto her, trying to comfort her as best as I could. The few minutes seemed like hours before I finally heard the sirens and tires screeching as the police and an ambulance pulled up to the house. It seemed as though I were watching an episode of Cops on television. The police sprang out of their cars, pointing their guns in the direction of where Bill was standing. "Put your hands in the air!" I heard the squeaky tires of the stretcher being pushed up the lawn into the backyard, and watched as they carefully loaded Cara onto it before taking her away to the ambulance. A policeman ushered the rest of us inside, putting us into separate rooms and handing us a statement form to fill out. After everything had settled down, the neighbor, Frank, had come to the back fence and was talking to Doreen. He explained that shortly before we returned from the drive-in, he heard Anna's dogs barking frantically. He didn't realize until now that they must have been barking at Bill as he made his way into the garage. Bill stabbed Kara 3 times. One of the wounds went to the center of the dragon tattoo on her back, puncturing her lung and causing it to collapse. After a couple days in the hospital, she was fully recovered and was very lucky to be alive. According to what Bill told the police, he was able to sneak out of the jail in Kansas and hitchhiked his way into Colorado with a semi-driver, and walked from the diesel station to Anna's house, where he hid in the garage, waiting for a chance to get to Kara. When the police questioned him about his motives to stab Kara, he simply stated,
"If I can't have her, nobody can."
2. It was the winter of 2008 to 2009 when I met Mike. I had just graduated high school and was working a night shift at the Walmart in the next town over. One day I logged into Facebook and noticed I had a friend request. I got that excitement we all know that we secretly get when we have a friend request, and we hope it's not some random e-whore trying to get more friends. I clicked the button and immediately recognized the person as the son of my childhood Girl Scout leader. He was a moderately attractive man, heavy build, big brown glittery eyes, dark skin, and a gorgeous smile. I was curious, so I accepted his friend request and we started IMing for a while. After a week or so, we finally decided to meet up for a little bit, and decided to meet at one of the parks located near my house in our small Colorado town. Being as it was kind of late in the evening, Mike also worked nights at the meatpacking company, and I, being a very careful person, decided I would take my dog with me. My dog is actually the sweetest thing in the world, Border Collie Golden Lab mix, and would never hurt anybody, but she was protective and would bark if we even roughhoused at home, or if someone made her nervous. I figured she would be good for protection, and if she didn't get nervous about this guy, then I didn't have anything to worry about. I hooked Sydney up to her leash and made the mile trek to the park. By cutting my way through the elementary school and across the large grass lot, Sydney and I made it to the park in less than 10 minutes, where I found Mike sitting on one of the swings and walked over to him. I was a little leery at first, but eventually warmed up, and we decided to walk the trails that led around the golf course. We spent an hour or two walking and talking, and found out we had quite a bit in common. It went well, and eventually we parted ways. The first couple of weeks went by smoothly. We'd meet up before we went to work at night and spend a couple of hours walking or sitting at my house watching television in my room on the nights we had off, as we both had Wednesdays and Thursdays off. I remember one night towards the beginning of our relationship, we met up at the park again. He parked his truck and we decided to go for a walk. We had just started working up the hill on the road when a cop pulled up next to us and questioned us. The officer had thought his truck broke down and wanted to make sure we didn't need help. After taking our names and licenses, making sure we weren't outside past town curfew for minors, everything checked out and he let us on our way. We decided it was pretty cold to be walking, so we got into his truck and went for a drive instead. Eventually, we parked next to the basketball courts and spent some more time talking and sharing stories. This is when I had my first kiss. Now when I look back on it, I remember how terrible it was. "What's today's date?" Mike asked me. "December 4th. "And that will be the day you had your first kiss." I really wish he hadn't said that, because this is something I've spent my whole life trying not to remember. He was a terrible kisser, and ended up drilling on me. I guess I should have cut it off right then, but I figured maybe he'd get better. Christmas rolled around and we exchanged gifts and started spending more time together. Then things started getting weird. He was always talking about this girl he really liked. She was 15, Mike was 22, and I was 18. This is when the red flags started going up. He would always tell me how she gave the best head and how he liked sex, and has had sex with so many girls. I felt like he was pressuring me or encouraging me to give myself up to him, and that's not what I was looking to do. I'm not so much of a prude, but I spent the many years before as a girl with very low confidence, always struggling with my weight and my appearance. I hated always comparing myself to these girls he claimed to have had sexual relations with. In late January, I finally came to my senses. I realized how completely creepy this guy was and that I didn't need this in my life. He had been telling me about how he was trying to get this girl to speak with him again, as her parents had prohibited her from seeing him. He would leave notes with another one of his teenage friends to give to her at school. He'd then start reminding me that we were not a couple, we were just friends with benefits. I may not have had self-esteem, but I sure had self-respect, and was not going to be one of those girls who got tied up in a relationship where the guy simply didn't want to consider them a couple, because he had other girls he would rather be with. He called me one night, and I told him that I didn't want to speak to him anymore. I told him I had heard enough about his sexual encounters, and that it was creepy that he would even think to tell me such things.
"And to think, I was just going to ask you to be my girlfriend," he told me.
"Well then, I called you just in time. I don't want to be your girlfriend. Please don't call me anymore." A couple of days went by, and I hadn't seen him or heard from him. I began spending time with my friend and co-worker Jesse. Then one night at work I was in my department in infants, and Jesse was over in the craft department and needed some help cutting fabric. Our small-town Walmart wasn't much for training, and I was the only person that night who knew how to do it, so I went over to crafts to help her. We were cutting the fabric when I heard the familiar sound of Mike and his friend Danielle in the toys department nearby. I looked out of the corner of my eye, and there he was, watching me. I had told Jesse about the relationship and how strange it had become. After we cut the fabric for the customer and the customer went on her way, I pulled Jessie to the next aisle and told her that Mike was there and that I wanted her to walk me to my car after work. The feeling in the pit of my stomach made me much more nervous than ever. There were only a few minutes of work left, so I hurried back to my department and finished my work, and met Jessie in the back at the time clock. We clocked out and hurried into the parking lot and to our vehicles. Suddenly, I was just seeing Mike everywhere. I thought I was just paranoid that since I didn't want to see him, it would feel like he was all over the place. I would run into him literally at the dollar store, the grocery store, or the movie theater. As his personality quickly soured, I started seeing how unattractive he really was. His big brown eyes started to look like beady, menacing rat's eyes, and his smile seemed more sinister and terrifying. The sight of him would make me cringe. Then the text messages started. I should tell you, I lived on a street of modular homes off a county road. Although we weren't really near the rest of town, we were still considered in city limits. To drive past my house, you would have to drive out of town to the first county road, then onto my street, which was kind of like a cul-de-sac. It went straight down and then turned at the end, and went back around to meet up with the main road in the middle. My bedroom window in the house faced the elementary school nearby, and the street is not in a location that you would just drive by during your daily routes. That's when I got the first text from him in a couple of weeks, and it was my night off.
"Hey Jackie, what's up?"
It was from Mike. I ignored the message and went about messing around on my computer when my phone dinged at me again.
"I know you're awake. I drove by and your light is on."
At this point I panicked a little bit. I shut off my light, closed my blinds, and went around to make sure the doors were locked. Being that I was working nights and I had only recently woken up, I just went back to my computer and my phone dinged again.
"I see how it is. See you soon."
I was seeing him everywhere. He'd be at Walmart every night he went to work, and I would hide myself somewhere so as to avoid him. He would stand in my department and wait for me to return before eventually leaving. I ended up quitting my job and even became afraid to leave my house alone. Jessie had coincidentally quit the day before me and would come to my house to pick me up before we'd head off to hang out. Valentine's Day rolled around, and I still hadn't completely gotten back on track to my sleep schedule. I was taking a nap in the late morning or early afternoon. When I woke up, there was a bouquet of daisies, my favorite flower, on my desk, and a puzzle of a penguin. I love penguins and puzzles, along with a card and a mixed CD. I opened the card, and it was one of those stupid singing cards, and written were the words, "You're so sexy," in Mike's ugly handwriting. I threw the card into the trash and remembered the mixed CD. Being curious, I put it into my CD player to find that it was full of stupid love songs. I took it out and broke it in half before throwing it into the trash along with everything else. I went out to the living room to find my little brother, who was 10, had returned from school. I asked him if he knew anything about the gifts on my desk.
"Mike brought them over. He took them to your room. He was in there for a while, so I figured you knew."
Feeling even more creeped out, I walked back to my room and sat at my desk. I was texting Jessie and telling her about the gifts when I received another text message.
Did you like my gifts? By the way, you look so peaceful when you sleep.
I literally had to run to the bathroom and throw up. I couldn't believe he was standing in my room watching me sleep. Eventually the messages started slowing down before coming to a stop. I didn't run into him anymore. I assumed he had gotten tired of following me with no results. Soon it was as though he had completely disappeared, or so I hoped. Last week I was back at Walmart picking up some groceries. I was browsing through teas, deciding upon the better value. Suddenly I just got this unmistakable feeling of being watched. I looked around and saw nobody, figuring it was just the chill of the store. I continued browsing through the different teas. That's when I heard his voice.
Hey.
I looked over, and right next to me, where seconds ago nobody had been, there was Mike, staring at me with his devilish eyes. I quickly grabbed a box of tea bags, mumbled hi, and walked off as fast as I could without looking too obvious. 3. This occurred when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and is a story that I only just recently remembered. It was summertime and my mom was having a garage sale in our driveway. Her, me, my brother, who was aged about 4 or 5 at the time, and my grandmother, my mom's mom, were all seated inside of the garage during the sale. Me and my brother, of course, had been playing a bit though, running from our yard and then back to our driveway and such. We had a few visitors, but it was one woman who is responsible for this story. She was older, about 70-something, and walked with a limp. I remember this because she had a cane. She was on foot and was carrying nothing but a small red toolbox, not a lunchbox, a literal metal toolbox. She carried things inside of it that you could hear clanging around. My dad had one just like it when I was a kid, that I wasn't allowed to touch because he was a plumber and didn't want me or my brother near his expensive tool sets. So I found it strange that she was just walking around with it. She didn't greet us. She just started picking things up and looking at them. My mom decided to initiate conversation, and this is how it went. M equals mom, C equals cuckoo-ass old lady. Hi, good morning.
Do you have anything for free?
Mom's a bit confused. Excuse me? C picks up an item.
Can I have this for free?
No, sorry. Everything has a sticker on it with a price.
Why is it not free?
This is a garage sale? I'm trying to sell things. It was at this point that the lady went quiet and my mom just stood up, staring at her. My grandma called me and my brother to sit behind her, and we watched and waited for something else to happen. The woman set her toolbox down on one of our tables and opened it up to reveal a bunch of random things. Little trinkets, loose change, actual tools. She had everything from Kleenex to quarters. It was weird. She motioned towards a small group of figurines my mom was selling and asked if she could have one for free. At this point my mom was getting annoyed and wanted this lady to leave. She said so, and the woman started walking towards us. She said something about how cute me and my brother were, as we sat ducking behind my grandma's chair. She started walking into our garage and my mom told her to stop and repeated that she should leave. She said something else about my brother and asked if we liked her trinkets, while she stood staring at us, and my grandma chimed in that she would call the police if the woman didn't leave. She then slowly turned around and walked back to her toolbox, lifting up one of the figurines and very obviously putting it in her box without paying for it. My mom didn't fight her on it, just told her to leave now, so she did. She wandered up and down our street, away from our driveway but within eyesight. She kept an eye on her for the rest of the day as she roamed around our neighborhood and surrounding streets until she finally left. It was super weird, and us kids were advised not to leave our garage for the rest of the day. The story continues on about a week later when me and my brother were playing outside again. We have landscaping around our house, which are rocks that have flower planters and birdhouses, nothing too spectacular. And it wasn't unusual for me and my brother to climb and stand on the rocks as kids. We started walking around my house to do this, and then went inside to get a drink or something of a sort. We weren't gone for more than a few minutes when we came back outside and returned to the exact spot we had just been in, and I immediately noticed that woman's same bright red toolbox sitting on top of one of the rocks in our landscape. I ran back inside with my brother and told my parents. My dad went outside to retrieve the toolbox, and it was the same that the woman had had, with her items still stored inside. I hadn't seen her since the garage sale, and still never have. But somehow she managed to leave that toolbox there without being noticed, which meant that she had to have been watching and waiting for the ideal time. The creepiest part is that our yard is away from our garage. In order to get to that part of our landscaping, you would have had to go up our driveway and literally walk across the entire length of our lawn and front of our house, and then to the side in order to place it there, since we have thick hedges and things blocking the rest of our yard from the public. We have 2 big windows on the front and side of our house too that were open, which just creeps me out more when I think that she could have been watching us from the outside. I don't remember what my parents did with the toolbox. I'm pretty sure they threw it away. None of us have ever seen that woman again. And there's no chance that we missed the toolbox the first time around. It was bright in color and was literally within our walking path. I noticed it as soon as I turned the corner of our yard. There was no missing it. I don't know what her intentions were, but I'm glad that we haven't encountered her since. Lady from the garage sale, let's not meet again. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 403. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I'd also like to take the opportunity, or maybe do this on a monthly basis, to invite those of you to join the Discord, if you haven't done so already. We're kind of gradually building up the numbers. I think we've got about 65 people right now. If I haven't posted a link in the description, if one of the mods could remember, I may forget because my head is up my bum right now, but, well, graphic, and I'm sure you didn't need to know that, but there we go. Okay, I'm going to keep this brief because it's very warm tonight. And I'm warmer still because I'm still all wrapped up and will be the next few weeks. Every time I go down, nurses whinging at me, oh, your skin's awfully dry. Yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm here for help. Oh, you need to put this on, you need to put that on. It's like, bloody barbaric treatment is what it is. Okay, that's enough grumbling. Anyway, I'm off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.